Welcome to Whisking It All with your host, Angela Esposito, co-founder of Whisk.ai, a food and beverage intelligence platform. We're going to be interviewing hospitality professionals around the world to really understand how they do what they do. Welcome to another episode of Whisking It All. We are here today with Frazer Nagy from Tablz.com. Thanks for being here, Frazer.
Oh, Angela, so great to have me on. Great to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, it's been a while, so happy to have you here. And for people who don't know, can you maybe walk them through what is Tablz.com?
Tablz is, something special. It's something new. It's not often you can say that you're really first to market in this way. But, I think as we'll get into it through the conversations, there's a few different ways you can look at it. But inherently, Tablz is very, very simple. Restaurants are the last industry in the world, if you thought of it from the economic standpoint, to do something called revenue management, which is the combination of premium seating and dynamic pricing. So think airlines, first class, comfort plus, but Google flights, everything, it's always changing based on supply and demand. Hotels, rental car companies, sports, everyone does this. But for restaurants, it's quite simple. We 3D map the inside of these beautiful properties. And from a consumer's perspective, I should say, for the first time ever, you're able to upgrade to the seat of your choice. So you want that window seat, you want that booth seat, you, like me, love rocking up to the bar and getting that great corner spot. Well, it's the most demanded request in hospitality. And yet, for whatever reason, in the hospitality industry, we do a very poor job of hospitality, giving, allowing a guest to get the seat they want.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny you mentioned that, because when I talk about the hospitality space, I always kind of say, it's always the last to adapt. Like, yes, there's a lot of tech and I know owners get bombarded with tech, but when you think about it, the coolest thing that happened was, open table and reservations. Then since then it was maybe cloud point of sale systems, right? Like, hey, you don't need all this hardware. You can now do it, on an iPad. And that was cool. But after that, and then, now there's kind of the QR code phase that came back, and maybe the ordering, because there's a lot more online ordering. But really, in general, this space is like quite behind when it comes to adopting tech. So it's super interesting to see what you're doing, and maybe to walk someone through it. So let's just imagine I'm a client. I guess let me ask you this: what cities are you guys available in right now?
Yeah, we're expanding. We're in Miami, we're in Scottsdale, Arizona, we're in Toronto, Chicago, New York, San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
Our first Los Angeles properties are going live this week. So you're going to start seeing this pop up a lot more. But to your point, Tablz is a little different how we're going to market. So for those that want to nerd out on that side, we have a bit of a playbook there. But from a user perspective, we're starting by embedding Tablz right at the point of the reservation button. So think of that traditional open table. You go on the restaurant's website, go on their Google now, and wherever that reservation button lives, Instagram. July 2nd, Angela, was this year was OpenTable's 25-year anniversary, 1998, wow. July 2nd. So for 25 years, there has just been this drop-down widget, 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. That is the guest service that you experience, even at the most beautiful, forward-thinking restaurant. So what we do is we create a little web app for every restaurant. And when you click Reserve Now, instead of just sending you right to that open table widget or that Resi widget or 7 rooms, well, now there's this little thing that pops up that says, hey, do you want to upgrade your seat and browse from this beautiful 3D selection, those 4K cameras? Or, hey, not for you, no problem. Go to Open Table. And that's what's really important, is that we're not looking to build another reservation system here, where this Tablz is a guest service platform. And that is what's really, really important. And, we can get more into that. So
I love it. And then I guess I'm already imagining, some use cases. I mean, you mentioned one, just people who really have a preference and like sitting at the bar or near this corner. I'm imagining maybe sports events, basketball game on, hockey game. You want seats, better, closer to the bigger TV or whatever it may be. I'd love to hear, what are some like other typical use cases you guys are seeing?
Yeah, well, I joke with some of our investors that just rooftop and waterfront tables is $1 billion marketplace on in itself, and I don't think I'll be far off when it's all said and done. So right away, anything with a differentiated view or experience. So take even a little waterfront property in Brooklyn versus a rooftop in Manhattan will both have value. Never mind
Mm.
in Los Angeles to Dubai to London. Like you just start adding up how many restaurants are built along water, which is something that most people don't even really consider. But then you get into different subcategories, like you said. Sports bars, huge. There's a huge and growing market of very experience-driven bars, fine dining, of course. I would call these, large concept casual fine dining places. I have never done a pitch and someone hasn't brought up Tao as an example of large format restaurants that have really created I would call it a large niche, places that are doing 1,000 covers a night, very experiential. You see them in every major city, and Tao might be the most recognizable in North America for that type of dining, but they're not alone. There are dozens and dozens of hospitality groups that are building those type of concepts. And then eventually there's different waves of adoption. So, we'll get to these even, my dream, I came from the farm to table, small restaurant format space. And maybe they don't have like 10 or 20 differentiated table experiences, but they might have 2 to 3. And I think there's a spot for them later down the road when we move more towards a more traditional marketplace of discovery. But today, those are where our markets exist. And you mentioned even live music. We have a Harry Potter bar on the platform. Yeah. And,
where is it? I gotta hit it up. Where is it? Where is this Harry Potter bar?
And I should say this so they don't get sued by their lawyers. They're technically not supposed to use Harry Potter, but no, it's a really cool concept called the Cauldron. They have one in New York, they have one in Philly, they have one in Chicago. Our New York and Chicago locations are live, but they're also in Europe. I think they're London based, and it's all wizard themed. So by the way, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, you name it, but you can do potion making, alcoholic potion making, and they've designed these spaces to have an experience. And where you sit can really impact your date night or your friends going out to do this fun experience. So we can look at it from all spectrums. It's not just bottle service at Tao. You can go down to really cool concepts like this. So that's what makes Tablz definitely special in that regard.
Yeah, it's funny because you think about if I think about maybe our parents' generation, you typically, our generation, we like to frequent, a different restaurant every week kind of thing. But if I think about maybe my parents' generation, you'd kind of find the spots you like and you'd go often. But in that, there was that preference of table. So it was that same theme of like, you get to know the owner, you kind of go every Saturday or maybe a couple of times a month, and you got your table. So it's kind of interesting to bring that theme, but to new experiences. And you're right, it can make or break the night, especially if you don't go out often. Going out's not cheap. Traveling, right? So you're in a different city. Maybe you're only going out for 2 or 3 nights. So a third or a half of your trip is going to be based on that restaurant experience, and getting, not being in control of your table. That makes a ton of sense. So yeah, tell me a bit about, just to take it a step back. I always love to understand, being a founder myself, where the idea kind of stemmed from, right? Like where was inception day when you're like, man, this is a problem we need to solve, and then kind of walk me through that journey.
Well, just to your point, it's great segue question there because, hospitality has evolved, right? And, we'll get into the economics piece of Tablz where, this is the first dollar an operator has ever seen that has no cost of goods, right? So when someone, and it's not that every Tablz upgrade is paid. 35% of our bookings are free, and that's an important part of our equation as well. But if someone pays $20 or $50 or $100 for that table, that when you're only making 6%, 8%, even 15% margins, that's a major difference. When, let's say, you and I go out for dinner, we spend $100, but they're only making 10, but then we were willing to spend $30 on the table,
right?
With no cost of goods. So we'll definitely get into that and what that means. But the guest service part is where it starts. And, you think about what you just sort of described in that generational shift, right? Dining was an occasion for our parents, and we can be nostalgic. There's something beautiful about that. They would go out once a month. That was like for families that could even afford that. Like that, right. Dining was often even an exclusive experience for many. Certainly in the middle class family I came from, my dad was fortunate. He remembers, but my mom's side never went out for dinner. They were farmers. Like it wasn't a thing, right? So our generation, when we're now 2023 will officially pass. It was lagged because of COVID, but we're going to spend 51 to 52 cents of every food dollar dining out now, right? So restaurants will officially surpass. And if you think of that demographic concentration as well, that's much higher in cities like New York, Chicago, Miami. Like people, so you're aggregating that across a whole country.
Right.
Never mind this concentration in these urban cities. So like we take dining for granted. So I could get very philosophical about that. But in this context, I think there's obviously a real need. So, I used to work, I've worked in restaurants since I was 13. Very first job was a banquet hall golf course. I had a little bow tie, these little Italian weddings in my hometown. And, but, I ended up dishwashing. I was a really, figured out how to make a Caesar salad and deep fry onion rings at a restaurant once as a, I can't even call it a garde manger position. It was below whatever that was. But, I really had a gift for the gab and really enjoyed serving, genuinely did. And the provenance of food and that the whole storytelling element that came with working in good farm to table restaurants. But wherever I was, whether I was working corporate or really good fine dining, or classic sort of scratch kitchens, we used to get calls all the time. And for 4 years, I worked at this fine dining restaurant from sort of 19 to 22, 23, busboy, maitre d', junior server, trying to get promoted. And so I really learned that game, that Tetris game that is reservation management in a busy restaurant. And we used to get these calls like, hey, it's my anniversary coming up. Hey, we're 6 for a business dinner. Can we have your best table? And I used to think, what the fuck is my best table? and what is that to you, right? Because everyone has their own different definition. There was one that seemingly was the best, but again, we would think like, here's our super VIP. We're going to put them on our best table. And for some reason they were unhappy because it was too drafty. It wasn't this. They wanted to be in a more secluded area. So I just couldn't. And then as I got older and started getting into the startup land and started reading, thinking about, from open table data to National Restaurant Association data, everyone says this is the most demanded guest service. How could something so simple be so difficult for a restaurant to execute on?
That's super interesting. And that's crazy when you think about it. Like, you mentioned 25 years. Like, I know Open Table was, one of the first to do what they did. And at the time it was, revolutionary what they did. Really? But it's crazy to imagine that it's already been 25 years. It's making me feel old, man. I'm like, wow. Feels like, 10 years ago. But that's crazy. And so I'd love to understand maybe, you mentioned the experience you've had in the hospitality space. I think that's such a great way to, get that insight, see that pain point, and maybe spark that idea. Was Tablz the first startup you had, or have you had other kind of startups? And I'd love to maybe, walk people through your journey of what led to Tablz.
Yeah, I keep mentioning this notion of like farm to table, and it is something very near and dear to my heart. And I will always prefer and rank great scratch kitchens for my choice of dining, just because I fundamentally believe in what it does for our economy when we procure the right ingredients and from the right people. So my first, although I do have a degree in international economics and econometrics, which you can really tell why Tablz has come to be, my love of hospitality and my fascination with economics and restaurant economics. But the first one, I had a project that I started called Transparent Kitchen. It was a real first-time founder journey. I saved up $18,000 of my server busboy tip money. I paid off my student loan. I was, felt like I was way ahead of my friends in that regard. I was always a very frugal kid. But, $18,000 is a lot of beer money for a 23, 4-year-old. It's not a lot of tech money. you learn quick, but somehow we made it way further than we should have. And the quick premise there is I got very fascinated with the storytelling of the ingredients. So we essentially built, still to this day, I think, shout out to my friends over at Pop Menu. They've really built an awesome system for menu management and websites, and I love it. But we essentially tried to build an interactive visual menu for the restaurant's website. And the thesis was, in 2015, every single restaurant just takes their paper menu and puts it as a PDF online. And what a boring experience that is. Very similar. You can see the parallels now with reservations and the things we've learned from that. But when you look at a black cod hand caught, or this chicken, the classic Portlandia episode, the chicken named Hank or whatever, where they want to know exactly where it comes from. Well, I was one of those people, and I still am, and I really care, especially where my animal proteins come from. But it's amazing to know that this restaurant's buying, the mushrooms from local farm, or this, and these local veggies grown on the rooftop. Like, people want to know and they care. Now, the thing there is we created this crazy interactive menu where you could see not only the chicken dish, but even where the chicken came from and which suppliers. And we were even getting to that level of like granularity of visual storytelling. And it was amazing. We ended up working with hundreds of restaurants in Seattle, Minneapolis, and Toronto region. Dozens of suppliers as we started connecting in their supply chain into the menu. What I learned very quickly is, although there are millions of people like me that really care where their food comes from, is that a sufficient bar to create something like that from a venture back or business? How do you charge the restaurant for this? How do you connect that storytelling to real bottom line? These are a lot of the questions that are really tough, and I think most succinctly expressed in the concept of a nice to have versus a need. So although this is a very great nice to have, and chefs really, really cared about it. Well, I've said maybe chef driven restaurants. Well, where does that fall for some of the bigger restaurants? And by the way, some of those bigger restaurants that might only procure 20% of good products, and 80% might be, in the questionable or standard, let's not say they're evil, but there's no story there. You're just buying Cisco rice,
Right.
Well, where does that fall? So all of a sudden you start realizing, market share. You don't want to, as a founder, you don't want to greenwash. You don't want to just pretend just to pull up numbers. So it's very interesting that when you're in, I would call it more social enterprise, where ethics and business clash. The niche we did find, though, was definitely allergies, and I would call them picky diners. Like 19% of adults now have an allergy, whether it's real or imagined.
Right. Gluten intolerance is
exactly
popping up the last 10 years or so.
So, hey, if you're in that category, 1 in 5 people that, maybe you don't care about the ethics, but you really don't want to eat gluten, well, that was a really good software for them. So that was it. A lot of lessons there. We got up to 1.4 million users and hundreds of restaurants. Wow. Like, we had traction. Just, classic
That's
question.
Awesome,
could we figure out how to make money from that?
Right. But you know what? It's funny because, before Whisk, I've had other startups failed. Most of them failed. But, when I say startups, I don't just mean, I tried it, like similar to you, like really went deep, spent years, money, team, and kind of failed, or at least didn't take off where I wanted it to. But if I think about all the learnings that I got during those years and then applied to Whisk, it's crazy. And even now, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was telling them, if I were to redo Whisk with what I know now, like all just the tech and startup and raising capital and hiring mistakes and you name it, I could probably do what I did in 7 years. Now it's been technically since I started, probably do it in like 2 years. And it's those lessons that you're able to learn. So yeah, I guess that's a big part of it, right? You take what you learned, applied it to Tablz, and it's probably part of the reason that Tablz is gaining traction and you're seeing that success, right?
It is. We there's a few things, 2, I guess, success metrics that, were very observable. One was just building the alpha MVP. It was hard to even say in that first business. It took us a year to 2, honestly, to have something that was functional, that like not just the pilot restaurant, but the second and third could adopt in the same way. So whatever alpha, beta you want to call that. In this case, it only took us 6 weeks. Like, it really was like a significant observable difference of time and energy to get something that multiple restaurants could use simultaneously pretty quickly. And then certainly decisions around what type of, like, that identification again of what you are and why that matters. And what I mean by this is, like, we clearly are a one-sided marketplace today. And that is very important for those that understand technology, because, we don't have the Uber, Airbnb, classic two-sided marketplace issue where, do we have enough drivers? Do we have enough restaurants? Do we have enough users? Well, the great thing is we're just putting it right at the point of interaction of reservations. So we don't have to go out and spend millions of dollars attracting people to download Tablz today. And that was so important, because if I fundamentally believe we just wouldn't even have anything off the ground. Imagine So you own a restaurant, I go to you and say, hey, by the way, this is one of the most significant user behavior shifts you probably will ever experience in your restaurant. Good news, it's free. Good news, it makes you a ton of money. Good news, it's all driven by consumers. So that makes it a lot less scary than getting in a stranger's car in Uber.
Right.
But imagine you do this with me and I said, maybe in 6-9 months, I'll get my first table, right? Because I got to attract the users. Like, I don't think that would ever,
Right.
the obstacles you face with restaurants, like that plus that equals no game.
Yeah.
I think this is the only way we're able to go to market. And then eventually, hey, I think we have a real shot. Like already the business is selling tens and tens of thousands of dollars of tables per week, per month, and it's growing every day. But there's a whole other prize at the end of this rainbow that is pretty cool. And I think our capital partners in our restaurants that really get it today as early adopters, they see it too.
That's awesome. And so if as you know, right, at Whisk, we deal with thousands of restaurants as well, but we help with what you alluded to, which is the COGS, right? And that's been going up with just costs going up in general and supplier relations and all that stuff. So we really try to help with that percentage, like you mentioned, right? You sell $100, 30% might be just cost of goods.
Mm-hmm.
The other 30 or whatever might be labor, and then you have a bit left over, and then you have your operational costs, you name it. But I'd love for maybe all the restaurants listening to walk through some of the maybe unit economics. So like, it sounds like a great value prop. So, we kind of walk through the client experience, go on the website, click on the booking. Do I want a regular reservation or this much better experience where I can choose where I want to sit, et cetera, at a fee? Great. Now, what does the restaurant, side look like? So if I'm a restaurateur, I own a restaurant, I know I have some key, real estate in terms of tables. Walk me through that process.
Yeah, first and foremost, we're chatting with restaurants. I'll quite quickly try to ease their initial fear. I don't know what's in the amygdala. I don't know what part of the brain it is, but the place that sends all those chemicals rushing forward. And the premise here is I too have managed a number of restaurants, and it is a Tetris game, as I joke. So the first fear we always get is like, my God, we give away a table, the whole house of cards comes crumbling down, and of course it doesn't. And there's a few reasons. We really focus, although there are like very specific, unique tables that we highly covet, and they should too. Because there's like, let's say, this one corner spot that's unlike anything else in the restaurant. Well, guess what? Like, you should use that. There's two ways to look at it. You either look at it as like this, we should revenue maximize this table to its fullest extent, or that is the one sacred table we only ever give away to I call them super VIPs. And honestly, both are fine with us, because if it's that one guarded sacred real estate and you need it for whatever super VIP, that's fine with us. If you're that type of restaurant, guess what? We know there's gonna be 10 other tables that are highly coveted. So from there, we move into what we call sort of these cluster sections. So take a standard restaurant. You can picture it any, like the 6 tables along the window, the 4 booths carved out on the one wall. Well, what we're really narrowing in on is that our user base doesn't care if it's that table or that one. They just want to be along that cluster, like the booth side by side. There's no real differentiated experience between this booth and this booth, but they want that wall. They want that window selection. And so that gives our operators like all the operational flexibility in the world, plus they get the revenue component. So this was probably our biggest lesson over the year. And what we go in with these operators, we just say, hey, okay, let's identify these key sections. They have different functions of value. We consult on that. We offer them a whole host of data that we're learning from all of our other partners. It's definitely, think of it, crowdsourced all of this data information. You're in Midtown Manhattan versus Little Havana in Cuba, or in Miami. Like, there's different functions that we're learning, and it's great. So from there, it's pretty simple. Like, we just price we shoot the restaurant, we create the sections, we price it, we people can upgrade, and this is probably the last most important piece for the operator. They keep their existing reservation system. So you have open table, you have 7 rooms, no problem to us. We have no pony in that race. You pick the system that's best for you, and then Tablz puts that reservation right into your system. So when your GM shows up at 2 p.m., noon, whatever, off for shift, or in your host team, well, the Tablz table is already at the specific location. And so There's no dragging and dropping. We see so many operators now using multiple reservation systems. They're manually recreating reservations in another system. This is the best part. We're like a digital and physical concierge behind the scenes. And it's only going to get smarter and better as we pursue even deeper integrations with these partners. But we really mean it when it goes live and people upgrade and it goes into your system.
Yeah, and it does make a massive difference. I remember when you got, speaking of Little Havana in Miami, when you guys got Cafe La Trova, place I frequent once in a while. Awesome vibe. I think they're top 50 best bars in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So they have a great
Yeah.
cocktail program, great food. But I remember, every time I go, they got live music. It's a really good vibe, and it's funny because the day you got it, I was like, this is such a good fit. I mean, there's many different scenarios, but I was like, this is
Yeah, for
perfect
sure.
for Tablz because you want to sit in the right spot when there's that live music and just the ambiance of that place. So it really resonates. And I think one of the big things, at least in my opinion, about Tablz is once you interact with it, right? So it's like, it's one thing to hear about it, but if people actually go, example, on Cafe La Trova or go to one of the restaurants you partner with and they actually see it, I find it makes all the difference. Kind of
For sure.
pictures worth 1,000 words. Like I remember when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is great. I can see where I want to sit, and it just speaks volumes to the customer experience of like how refreshing it is to have that capability. So that's awesome. I think one of the things I'd love to maybe walk through is, so from the restaurant's point of view, I think, at least from what I'm hearing, it sounds like the risk is pretty low. There's no switching costs because they're using the regular reservation system, which is awesome. One less hurdle and thing for the restaurants to worry about. So what does the onboarding look like, right? So you get to a restaurant, they're like, hey, Frazer, this sounds pretty cool. I want to try it. What happens? Walk me through it. What happens next?
Yeah, it's very straightforward again. We just need a clean, we say, camera ready dining room. So, make sure your mop bucket isn't sitting next to the bar, and make sure the tables are correct. For definitely some of the early operators, we can't make it to all the shoots ourselves. Like, the great news is we have people coming around, we're getting inbounds from Europe now too. And we're not going to be able to have, myself or my team on the ground, but we've already been there helping straighten the linen and the knives and making sure their candles are lit, because it doesn't matter. It's like, this camera, they're 4K, they pick up every little detail, and that's what you want, because the restaurants we're working with, whether it's again a sports bar to really experiential or fine dining, like, they have invested likely low millions, if not more, into the aesthetic of their space. And it's pretty crazy to me, again, someone who just spent, let's say, $2 million renovating their restaurant has an open table widget. Like, not really the experience. And good luck still today with all of the trillions of photos we take of restaurants and food. Try to find like a half decent interior photo of a restaurant in 2023. It's like the most bizarre thing in my mind ever,
Sure.
that even Google can't extract the right content of the dining room. So there's a lot of value there. So really, it's just about getting the place clean, ready to go. We shoot it. We can do it at night, so a lot of candlelits. We can do it during the day. We really try to mirror that vibe. In some cases, we've done winter and summer shoots. Some cases, we've had night and. So we get to work with the restaurants in that way. And then, the rest of it is sort of what we addressed in the last question, where, hey, we make some recommendations, those window tables, those booths. But most GMs, most operators already know inherently. We like to say we just make those little bit of tweaks for them, push them in this direction or that direction based on what we're seeing, because this is the first time they've ever had to think of it this way. And we generally start them off with maybe lower prices in the $12 to $20 range, or 20, 30. And then what we're seeing is, systematically with certain properties, we just start slowly creeping it higher. There's always a logical point. We still want to make sure, by the way, like 5 p.m. flip times, we highly encourage those are free, because we see those at this elasticity point. Well, we're certainly not charging Monday at 5 p.m. versus Saturday at 7. What a different function of demand. But even maybe it's Saturday at 5 for a restaurant that is very busy. Well, what if we use that pricing psychology, that elasticity of demand, which is called in economics, to say, oh, well, if I come in at 5, I get the best table for free. But if I come in at 6:30, it's likely booked up, but I get it. So for those more, for those people that are willing to move, but then we see what's really interesting. There's time and data where, let's say, it's $20 at 5:45, or sorry, free at 5:45 and $20 at 6. like you think, oh, why wouldn't you just go 15 minutes early? And the amount of people just book 6 because that's when they want to come in, and price isn't an object. Like, this is where we're going, really trying to impart on that restaurant. So you just got to shoot it, then we help you with it, and then it just goes on your website. I know every restaurant tech says there's a 3-step process. It sounds like such a cliche, but I think ours actually is. So
That's awesome. And so once it's on the site, they can decide, how many days, how many tables, so they can ease into it if they want, let certain days open, let certain times open. And then what's been the reaction? So once people, I'm imagining the first time, maybe a restaurant owner or operator gets that booking, what's that like for them?
I'll be honest, I think they, we're at the stage right now where they're just like, please don't go wrong, right? Like, and I'll be brutally honest, because it's so new, and their psychology is like, no complaints is a good thing, because there's, this initial reaction is they're just, and I say it frankly, like the industry operates at such a position of fear generally, right? Like we even if we know we're running out of money, we would rather just like put our head down and hope for the best. So I get it. I'm from the industry. We operate from that position, and we recognize that a lot of this is hand holding. And then, what happens by a week in, by 2 weeks in, by a month, it's like, oh, I get it. This just sort of runs behind the scenes. The reservations end up in our system. Oh, our first paycheck. Oh, we just made 1,000 this month. We made 2. Oh my, this is new to me. I'm getting checks from my technology provider every month with no cost of goods. Like, so, it's going to take a while to build Rome here. We get it. We're working with our first 20 really good hospitality groups that own a couple hundred properties. They're start with 1, then they had 2, then they had 5. And, we have some really, really big groups now sniffing around global brand names. But we know they're not everyone's willing to be in that first adopter, right? And so we really, we're really grateful for some of these incredible groups like Cafe La Trova, like LDV, Scarpetta American Cut, and Mercer Street. And, there's some In Good Company Hospitality here in New York has been such an incredible partner with us with Refinery Rooftop. And you just see like these early adopters, and they're already like, now they're adding group bookings. So, hey, like try to get a 10 top in New York or Chicago, and Miami, like good luck.
Yeah, good
Because
luck.
open table caps out at 7, right? And then you get into this weird ambiguous private event space of like 35 plus. So like just 12 friends going out for dinner is like the Olympics in most major cities, trying to get a table. So I think we have some really interesting areas to fill, but we just want to make sure, as you said, that first reaction, guys, it's going to be okay. We're not going to bat 100%. There's going to be a hiccup here, but right now we're batting like 99. So, let's keep that up, and it's only going to get stronger year over year. So
That's awesome. It's so true. I never thought about the plus 10 thing, but now that you mentioned it, I was kind of smiling because I was just realizing it's happened to me where it's like that you're in that awkward zone of, you're right, whether it's open table or another system, it's like, hey, I can't do more than 7 or 8. And then you go to the website and there's a whole kind of private event, email this person who's typically going to be available more of a 9 to 5. So you're kind of like in this weird in-between zone. So it's super interesting. And I wanted to ask you is, do you find that there's like, I'm just thinking of this out loud now, but I would imagine there's maybe some type of natural referral that happens, not just from the restaurant side, because I know the restaurants are close and, they usually recommend what tech they're using and things grow like that. But what about from the client side? Like if someone booked at a restaurant and had that good experience, do you think there's a likelihood that when they frequent a restaurant, maybe they know better, they're bringing that up? Have you seen any kind of referrals come from that side?
Yeah, it's we're going on 30, maybe even more now, 40,000 guests have used Tablz at this point. And if you think of where we start, like, so it took us from January 1st, 2022 to June 1st, 2022 to sell our first $10,000 worth of tables and do our first like X thousands of bookings. And we did that last week alone. So wow. There's a compounding nature to this whole thing. So that's very exciting. We're just out of COVID. Like, I think people in the life cycle of our industry, some of our hometown markets back up in Canada, Toronto was literally on government lockdown on February 17th, 2022, right? New York was still in restricted capacity in March. Like we're only a little over a year into this. So it's really cool to see 2023 was a real, 2022 was like PTSD. We survived. 2023 was maybe our coming out party, and 2024 is. I think we'll see some real compounding. Hopefully outcomes to our results or from our actions. So to that point, like man, I could talk to you all day about where I would love to see our consume like our user, our guest interactions happen. I'm going to say a few things around maybe not directly about referrals, but we have a property here in Manhattan where we shot it at sunset because the amount of people that demand to go for sunset to watch it set over the Empire State is incredible, right? And I want to think of this psychology. Like right now, you make a booking, maybe just for 6 p.m. because that's when you're hungry and want to go out to eat. So there's a whole category of people that just browse and they're just like, oh, hey, sweetie, do you want a burger tonight or do you want to do pizza, right? Then there's this category of like destination restaurants, which drive a huge portion. It's like, no, I want to go to this restaurant tonight. It's not this because I'm hungry. I'm trying to get this reservation. But like, what is that next category? Like, where do you take discovery? Well, hey, like, think of what Airbnb is doing in travel. Oh, you want to stay in an igloo tonight? You want to stay in a castle tonight? Like, they're pushing the boundaries of what happens, right? So what does that mean for dining? Hey, do you want to go see the sunset with a glass of sparkling in our hands? Like, what a beautiful experience. Do you want to go, hey, we'll do a great brunch along a seaside? Like, we do that maybe subconsciously, but
Right.
if Tablz could make that a far different experience than 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. widget, I think we could radically change. And guess what? We have all the 4K scans of all the real estate. So, when I think we get there from group bookings to these experiences, we do have inherent network effects that are in our favor. And I think when we start really getting out there, they're just going to start compounding, which I'm really excited for.
That's awesome, man. That's and I definitely can see that happening. As you're mentioning sunset, I'm thinking of just my own kind of bookings. When I have friends visit me in Miami, one of the things that we should go to this. One of our clients, we should go to this sunset. We have a sunset menu, and they got a beautiful view of the water. Yeah. So it's like we know that's a spot, and if it's a weekend, and we know another good spot that's like in a state park, and it's got a unobstructed view of the sunset because it's literally on the water. So it's so true that subconsciously we're doing that anyway. So making it easier to do that makes a ton of sense. So where would you like to see Tablz next year? I mean, I'm obviously growth in terms of restaurants, but I'd love to kind of hear if you want, share your vision of what's next for Tablz as growth keeps compounding.
Yeah, on the product side and that guest experience, everything is about that, the differentiation between maybe one experience to the next. So what makes this restaurant special, both at the high level, but then what makes it really, like, what is the thing you can table or the time of day? So let's just throw this whole category of vibe and differentiation. So I want to get to the point where you can even click on, like, not only are you on the table, but I want to see what the vibe is at 5 p.m., 7 p.m. versus 10 p.m. And I think we can get there before any other platform can, which is really, really exciting. So that's where I want to see it go on that end and just make this the most experiential booking experience anyone's ever seen. It already is, certainly. I can probably safely say that already, but I think we're, again, only 20% of the way there into making it to what it could be. And then, who knows, like, what's going to happen with all of these new visual ways that, Apple's announcing products. Right. Like, when we look 2-3 years from now, well, like, this thing changed everything 10 years ago. Now we're going on 15, but like, what's the next realm? And certainly I think we're in the right position. We don't know where that's going to go, but maybe you have something that connects that you then walk through that dining room and say, you can pick that table versus, again, a widget that says 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. So right. I'm excited for that. I think in the next year, let's just start with stuff that already exists, bringing in video content, bringing in vibe content, making what a lot of our operators have said, bridging the reality to their digital guest experience. So what's going to happen when you get there? Well, guess what? You can have a taste of that. It's never going to replicate, right? Go to Cafe La Trova. We can put a video of people dancing to that amazing music and eating that incredible. I've dined there twice now. Just honestly, some of the best food I've ever eaten. That's never going to be replaced. And that's why you and I love the hospitality biz, Right. That's why I'm not in crypto or I'm not in AI right now. I'm not smart enough to be in AI, but that's definitely why I'm not in it. Is actually there's a human element that I don't think will ever be replaced in our industry, and I think that's still what keeps a lot of us in it. So, and then on the restaurant side, things always, they never go as fast as you want. I could say I want 1,000 partners by next year. Of course, it's, we're going to still grow at the pace that we can. But it really starts, in this business with relationships. And, we have, again, it's not nothing to sneeze at, just beginning with 20 amazing hospitality groups and growing from there. And as you said, making sure that the initial value they saw is accurate, which certainly is. They're not taking properties, they're adding, and making sure that their friends see what they saw. And if you weren't that first adopter, you're the second adopter, well, no problem to us. That's totally fine. Let's get there. And that's how I see it. So it's going to be a psychological battle for operators, just making sure they're comfortable. Although, as we described in this call today, all these benefits, free money, get better guest experience, it doesn't mean you can just snap your fingers and do that. And then on the guest side, just making this the most beautiful interactive tool that you've ever seen for booking your next dining experience.
I love it, man. Very well said. So maybe just to end off, so for people that, just to reiterate, for people who want to find you, for restaurants who want to, learn more, sign up, maybe try, tell me, where can they find you? What's the process look like if they want to maybe, sign up? And then, I'd love to kind of share that with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, go to our website, tablz.com, tablz for our connects to the north there. It's, go there. There's a few sort of samples of some of our partners that are using it really well. But, I will say, sorry, all the diners out there. We don't have like a marketplace today where you can browse all the tables. That's strategic. We've planned that, but definitely for operators, come check it out, use it. It's free to join. Shoot us a message in the contact. Say hi to Angelo. Get him to bug him to get my number. But no, it's very, very easy. Just Frazer@tablz.com. So my first name. And there's no shortage of ways to get a hold of us. So certainly we would love to have you if you're a great restaurant doing great things and have a beautiful dining room. So.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Well, guys, you heard it here. Tablz.com, changing the game when it comes to reservations for restaurants. Here with the CEO and founder, Frazer. Frazer, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Feel free to check out Whisk.ai for more resources and schedule a demo with one of our product specialists to see if it's a fit for you.